Let's talk about communication.
You do want to argue. You wanted to make your point, so let me make it back.
Hannah,
And then you're going to try to say it's too spicy for me. No, I got you. Like,
It's
let me
just-
respond.
not too much
It
spice.
is not capitalism coming in and enshrining enslavement. And in fact, capitalism is what got rid of it and started pushing back against this centuries-old awful institution. So to say it's capitalism, I think is honestly offensive.
Slightly angry. She reminds me of Megyn Kelly. Just mad, rawr.
Oh boy. Hi. If you're critical of capitalism, chances are you've had a lot of brain.
Let's see, I did not introduce the video. This is Harper O'Conner. This is the key to persuasion as a leftist. So this is kind of how to communicate from a leftist perspective. I just found this guy earlier today. I watched the video once. I actually watched it 1.5 times to try to make the video earlier. And I had to go somewhere and I just ended the video. I'm starting over. So the key to persuasion as a leftist, basically just ways to communicate.
Dead arguments just like this one. These discussions can be super frustrating because you'll encounter the same talking points again and again. But it can seem like no matter how strong your argument is or how good your evidence is, it's like talking to a brick wall. The harsh reality is most leftists are nowhere near as persuasive as they could be because they spend so much time thinking but almost no time communicating. The good news is persuasion is a skill, and anyone can learn it. I studied rhetoric and debate competitively for 4 years while also building an audience of over 100,000 followers, so I should know. So today...
So he's a leftist. An audience of over 100,000 followers is not really that many on YouTube. If you look at the right-wing channels, they get 100,000 followers in their first 6 months. They build up to millions of followers. The right has a way big infrastructure everywhere than the left, and we need to start communicating, and we need to start building our infrastructure. Like, get on YouTube, join the Green Party, start getting into politics, guys.
Today, because I want to help you develop your persuasive powers, we're going to break down this Jubilee video right here and see what it can teach us about crafting messages that actually reach people. One quick note, I'm not really here to fact check or add my own commentary.
I'll do some of
Other
that.
people have done that sort of thing already. All I want to do is give you the skills to win over as many people as possible. If that's what you're looking for, then great. Let's get into it.
America would be a more powerful country under communism.
So I would say yes. America is a powerful country now, the way we do capitalism, because we attack other countries and we break other countries, we coup other countries, we put tariffs on other countries. So we compete and fight with other countries. In a more communist system, it's more about the workers of the world. It's more about the people of the world. It's about uniting. It's a state. They call it a stateless, but I don't really think you can have a stateless government because just working together, people call it state. So it's more kind of a stateless, but a borderless, classless society where, so if America was communist, we would stop killing everybody. We would let other communist countries come up and the entire world would have more power. And then with with rising tides lift all boats, with everybody else having more power, we would also have more power. But it kind of depends on how you look at power. If you want to dominate people, in the capitalist system right now, we're dominating people. So it could happen that somebody dominates us later. But in the communist system where we're cooperating, that's power for everybody. And if we all have 100% power, then we're all the most powerful. And yes, then America's more powerful too.
I think one of the main misconceptions about communism.
And real quick, this is Malumbo. I did a video on him yesterday. This is just kind of a coincidence, maybe the algorithm. I didn't know he was going to be on this video. I've never seen the guy that I'm doing the video on. This guy here that was behind me, I don't know him, so it's just kind of a coincidence that Malumbo's on here, but here he is, and he's a good talker, so let's go.
Is that it's just making everybody equally poor. When Marx and Engels wrote repeatedly that the first step under communism is increasing the productive forces.
This is key. If you want people to appreciate what you have to say rather than tuning you out, then you have to fix this one mistake. It's very simple, but I see so many leftists make it. go easy on the jargon. What Eddie said here is not that bad. I think most people can assume what productive forces mean in this context, but there's a chance that they don't, and that's not a risk that we want to take. Think about it this way. For someone to...
So yes, easy on the jargon. I'm kind of a political wonk, so I'll say stuff like wonk and big words about policies or politics where you can kind of throw people off. And if you talk about the proletariat, the bourgeoisie, stuff like that, you kind of put yourself in a little bit of a shoebox before you even get to the conversation, right? Because they're going to think, oh, this is a far leftist person with radical ideas if you use certain words, right? So I agree that you should kind of go easy on the jargon. Let's let him explain it.
To agree with what you're saying, they have to understand what you're saying
That's
first.
True.
Pretty simple, right? Which means priority number one is always making sure that the other person knows what you're trying to communicate. It's not to drop jargon. It's not to feel smart. If that's your goal, this probably isn't the channel for you. But if you want to learn to communicate...
Yeah, a lot of people, when they debate or communicate, they listen to respond and don't listen to hear, right? They want to have a response for it. And sometimes people already have the response ready and they don't even, doesn't matter what you say, they're going to say the same thing back. And that's kind of the jargon phase, right? Because when you speak in jargon, you kind of know what each other are going to say. Because I've had conversations back when I was early in my political starting off, and I would kind of know what the conversation and almost exactly how the conversation was going to go from front to back, because it was all this jargon speak. So yeah, it's like speak to be understood. And if you make it so easy to be understood, oh, we got some chainsaws going now. Hope it ain't too bad. But if you speak to be understood, if you want to speak so that you're understood, so that they can think about it and that they can hear what you're saying, rather than just saying some jargon that either confuse them or keep them in like a loop so that they're going to just repeat their jargon to you.
10 times better. You just have to drop your ego and laser focus on one question. How can I communicate this in the simplest way possible? Keep in mind, most people have genuinely not read a single book since school. And I practice what I preach on this. If you put my video scripts into an app that measured how complicated the words are, you'd realize that I actually speak at about an 8th grade level. And it's not because I think you're stupid. It's because I care about communicating effectively. And I don't need big words to do that. So that's the first reason that you need to avoid jargon. If people can't understand you, it's game over. But there's actually a second reason why you may not be connecting with people, and this one goes way deeper. It's because jargon marks you as an outsider. What I mean is, we all have a set of words that we use every day. Of course, it's different for each person. A young lady working as an accountant in Cincinnati will speak much differently than a middle-aged welder living in Georgia. But I think we can both agree, for most people, phrases like bourgeois, alienation, and productive forces are not familiar. So when you use weird phrases like this, people may understand you still, but they're automatically going to trust you less because they're going to realize you're not like them. Now, if this sounds like how a caveman would think, you're right, it totally is. You need to understand this. People are not totally rational. I'm not saying you need to manipulate them or that you can't appeal to their logic. What I am saying is nobody thinks like a philosopher all the time. Everyone is biased. So don't play with one hand tied behind your back by using phrases.
And another thing is, you don't want to talk down to people or be condescending, right? A lot of people do that with Trump. They'll say, Trump lies, or Trump does this, and the people will be like, well, Kamala Harris does that exact same thing, or Joe Biden does that exact same thing, like how Joe Biden pardoned his son, right? You know, like, they're all criminals, they all steal. And so the Democrats now, they're saying how they tried to play the part of being holier than thou, like Charlemagne the God saying that and stuff. But it's just, don't talk down to people either. Like, he has real good points too. I just wanted to add that. Don't placate people.
That make you seem like a weirdo. It's very simple. By the way, no hate to the people in this video. It's very hard to communicate effectively in a high pressure situation like this. Everyone in this video did a fine job. It's very easy for me to criticize them from the sidelines, but that's not.
We can all Monday morning quarterback.
If I seem critical, it's just because I'm using this conversation to highlight some of the common pitfalls that I see in interpersonal communication, especially when it relates to politics and political persuasion.
So why did I come to communism? When I actually read it, when I went from Marx to Lenin to Mao, to Deng, to Fred Hampton, I started realizing like, oh, this is patriotism. This is the idea that I look at another American and think to myself, I want you to be fed. I want you to fulfill in your life. I want you to feel like you actually have control within your society.
Right?
That was
what society should be.
If you want to win people over, you need to understand what he just did. And I'm not just talking about the way he speaks. Obviously, he's a great communicator. The deeper concept at play here is called frame control. Here's how it works. Basically, frame control means linking an idea to a deeper idea. The right is very good about this. When they talk about immigration, they always link it to crime. So if you care about law and order, if you want your country to be safe, you'll be anti-immigration. When they talk to young men, they try to link being left-wing to being weak. So if you're a young man and you care about being masculine, you'll be a conservative. And in this case, when they talk about economics, they try to link capitalism to the strength of the country. So if you're patriotic, you'll support capitalism. And way too often, left-wing people fall into the trap of addressing the argument without addressing the underlying fear. Because the truth is, it was never about immigration or culture war or economics. These issues have been tacked on to a primal desire to feel safe, to feel accepted as a man, to feel secure and prosperous. Fear, desire, safety, belonging, these are old emotions. Lefties don't like to acknowledge this because we prefer to live in a world where everybody's perfectly rational. It makes us uncomfortable to stir up these animal spirits, but I can promise you our enemies are quite willing to tap into people's deep, unspoken desires, and they've gotten very good at it. So again, we see a conflict at the logical level, but subconsciously, at the emotional level, there are much more powerful forces at play. I'm not saying you should push people's buttons. I'm not saying that you shouldn't ground your opinions in research. As a matter of fact, I just put out a reading list for beginner leftists who are looking to get more educated. I'll
put a link to this video here below, and he's just going to say that he's going to link those books below in his video.
Link that below. No, what I am saying is you need to ground your appeal in forces and emotions that people can understand in their gut. So to bring it back to the footage at hand, Eddie and Malumbo are using the language of stability, of security, of patriotism even, to advocate for their point of view. You can use these appeals.
That's good, right? Because the right wants patriotism and safety, freedom, liberty. Those are good things. If you can bring the left-wing view, the left-wing policies to show them how to bring them more safety, more freedom, more liberty.
Appeals in an authentic way.
I want to thank Charlie Kirk for the work that he's to affect the youth that we've ever had.
You don't have to surrender this frame to the right.
The CIA has particular skills. So much of what you learn at CIA.
Disagreeers are walking
quick.
That
was kind of weird. They moved like 3 commercials in a row.
Security, of patriotism even, to advocate for their point of view. You can use these appeals in an authentic way. You don't have to surrender this frame to the right.
Disagreeers are walking quick on this one. Can I say something first on this one to be so bold? There's not a mass immigration into Venezuela, into China, into Russia. Where do people want to go? Switzerland, America, Sweden.
So here's one thing that will instantly level up your communication ability. Identifying assumptions. This clip is a great example of that. Ty is saying people want to come to Western countries. What he's not saying is because they're capitalist. That part is implicit. But
a big reason people want to come to Western countries is that Western countries kill everybody else, right? We sit there, we bomb the Middle East. We sit there, we destabilize Africa and South America. The U.S. doesn't invade Europe. We don't invade Sweden. We invade Somalia and any other country with brown. We talk about invading China and Russia. Well, I'm sure people do migrate to Russia and China a bit, but it's harder to migrate to the Middle East. Who's going to go to Iraq when the U.S. is in Iraq bombing Iraq, right? You're not going to go there. Who's going to go to Chile when we've overthrown Allende and put in Pinochet? Who's going to go to the places where we overthrow democratically elected leaders and put in fascists? You're not going to go to those countries because they're not safe.
Think about that for just 1 second. Most of the people who are crossing the border, unauthorized immigrants, are from Mexico, which is, last I checked, also a capitalist country. So when we consider this fact, we realize that Obviously, people aren't coming to the US because it's capitalist. They're coming to the US because it's rich. So as you interact with people, you need to listen not just to the text of what they're saying, but also the subtext.
So people do leave other capitalist countries to come to this capitalist countries because those capitalist countries are poor and this capitalist country is rich.
Because if you catch this, you can make the implicit explicit, and then you're having a deeper conversation. So how do we do that? Head-on approaches do not work well in these situations, at least in my opinion. I actually think that asking questions is the best way to get people to state the unstated. So in this case, you could ask, well, why do you think people are coming over? Aren't people coming in large numbers from Mexico or other capitalist countries? So now you're talking about why some countries are poor and why some countries are rich, and that opens up the door to a discussion of imperialism. So the conversation has been broadened. By the way, this tactic is only going to work if it comes from an authentic place of genuinely wanting to understand their perspective. People can sniff out inauthenticity from a mile away. Real vulnerability is the...
So that's kind of what I was talking about, how people tend to listen to respond rather than listen to hear and then like understand what the people are saying, right? So you want to listen to understand, not listen to respond.
The key to impactful conversation, not facts, not figures, not logic, all of that comes later.
When we look at countries like Cuba and China, I think it's more important to judge them based on what they had before the revolution. Before Cuba had a revolution, nobody had access to healthcare. They were working on slave plantations that were dominated by Western multinational corporations. China, before the revolution, yes, there were famines during the era of Mao. There were far more famines before Mao came to power.
And we had famines in the U.S., like the Dust Bowl and all that stuff. Famines happen.
And before China was able to industrialize and get to the point today where they're now one of the most powerful countries on earth. In the 1950s, the US was already industrialized. China had to do that. They were a semi-feudal country in extreme poverty. And in just 70 plus...
And so the last video I did, it showed China helping Africa, right? They built a railroad in Africa. He was talking about in the 50s, they were a feudal country, right? So 20 years later, they're already helping Africa to build railroads and stuff. If the US would have expanded like China's expanding, trying to build infrastructure in other countries, then the world would be such a far better place.
Years they've become this economic superpower.
Another great example of frame control. Again, you just want to expand the conversation whenever possible. So in this case, Eddie's pointing out how the way that we talk about these countries doesn't really make sense. And so rather than comparing socialist nations to rich capitalist countries like the US, we should be comparing them to other countries at comparable levels of development. Or we should be actually tracking before and after the revolution, right? That makes a little bit more sense. So he's just kind of adding some nuance to the conversation, and that can help people think past some of the narrative frames that they probably just used without thinking about it. By the way, this isn't like you trying to wrestle control of the narrative frame away from them. Conversation is not a zero-sum game where they have to lose for you to win. Conversation is a positive-sum game. When we share our perspectives, we broaden our horizons, and we all win. Now, important distinction here, there's a difference between a discussion and a debate. A discussion is positive sum because you're both just sharing your perspectives. A debate is zero sum because you're actually trying to win. And in a debate, the point is to win over the audience, not necessarily the person that you're actually talking to. So in a discussion, we're always trying to build rapport. We're always trying to find common ground. Whereas in a debate, we're trying to win. So it's okay to make your opponent look dumb or play to the crowd a little bit. That's why I would advise you to never debate one-on-one, because that's just an argument and that's just a waste of time.
And in just 70 plus years, they've become this economic superpower. That is through central economic planning and yes, allowing some of those private markets in.
That's by undercutting the U.S. on labor because they don't actually have to pay people very much. They don't have to pay them based on their values, so they can make people come over there and work far cheaper, have their companies there, and then we buy their products cheaper. We are propping up China's economy, and we've been really stupid with our own policy.
Isn't that how capitalism works? You find the cheapest labor you can find so that you can sell the cheapest product and make the most profit. That's what we want to do. Again, as we sent our jobs over there, we should have made new jobs over here for the people that were working in those jobs to have different types of jobs.
Policies when it comes to that.
This could change your life.
Crafty framing right there. Hannah said we are propping up China's economy. But Malumbo is smart. He catches it and he asks, who is we?
Who is we? When you say we, who is in this we? Because we did this, because we did that. Who is this metaphorical we?
So what's going on here? He's pointing out that China didn't steal our jobs, and we didn't voluntarily send them away. What happened was capitalists realized it would be cheaper to outsource labor, so they did. What we're seeing here is nationalism masking class conflict. So it's important that we be able to point out the real cause of people's suffering. Because a lot of people today are scared and angry, right? They're worried about the economy. They're worried about unemployment. They're worried about the opioid crisis. They feel squeezed by inflation. They have a sense of lacking purpose, of lacking any sort of community in their life. And the Democrat Party, the left in America, has no real answer to that because they're totally.
And again, the Democratic Party is not the left. They're considered the left in America, but that is not the left. They are not for the people. They are not communist, socialist. They are capitalists all the way. They're putting money before people. If you ain't got money, you ain't getting health care. That is not a left-wing thing.
Totally beholden to corporate interests. So often the only way that people can make sense of their anger is through these right-wing populist narratives. They're told to blame China, immigrants, cartels, whatever. So how do we derail this? First, we have to acknowledge their pain. We have to acknowledge what they're going through. Literally just repeat what they said as if you were a stupid person. So it sounds like you're angry about jobs leaving for China because it puts stress on American workers. And they're gonna say, yes. You know how powerful that is? That's rapport. That's you actually understanding them. And people crave that so much. They want to be understood. They want to be heard. It's so rare. So once you've done that, once you understand their suffering and you acknowledged it and you agree that it's a problem, then and only then can you present your counter narrative. I don't think it's the fault of Chinese people. I think it's the fault of the bosses. They're just looking for cheap labor. They don't care about us. Again, I need you to understand this isn't just a rhetorical tactic.
Right. Don't be killing people, but look at the CEOs, like Luigi Mangione said, or not said but did. It's not the Chinese people, it's not the Mexican people, it's the people that are making $10 million a year and then doing $15 million shady deals on the stock market and whatnot. It's not the average person doing work. And again, when we sent our jobs away, we should have just had new jobs here for the same people. There's still people that need to work.
Deprogram the hogs. It goes way deeper than that. This is how you actually connect with people like a human being. I can't guarantee that you'll change their mind right then and there, but I can guarantee they'll be 10 times more receptive to what you have to say. But why is that? I want to drill into this briefly. It works because humans are hardwired for reciprocity, which basically means that people feel obligated to return favors. For example, if you'd never seen my videos before and I asked you to subscribe to the channel, you probably wouldn't do it because you have no idea who I am. But if you've been...
Speaking of, go ahead, check out his channel. His name is Harper O'Conner. Again, I'll leave the link to the video in the bottom in the description, or not, yeah, in the description. Oops, I hit the wrong button. Play.
Watching my videos for a while and thought they were valuable, then you probably would, because I'd built up that goodwill. I'd shown you value. So if you think about this in the context of persuasion.
Right, so if I've shown you value yet, please like, share, subscribe my videos. If I haven't, give me a couple more chances, watch a few more videos, see if I build some value with you.
You'll realize that what I've just been saying is that listening is weirdly way more persuasive than speaking. Because when you actually listen to someone, they'll feel compelled to return the favor and listen to you.
Giving people government aid makes them lazy.
I already seen this, so I'm gonna let Malumbo.
Makes you lazy. A great example of that is Elon Musk.
Boom.
The amount of government aid the X Foundation gets in order to pursue inventions that don't work. How often did you hear about that tunnel? Elon Musk is just one example of many different CEOs, multi-corporations, who get government aid to be able to do these things just because they have the net worth.
Oh man, absolute masterclass in framing. Nobody likes thinking about how their tax dollars are subsidizing the richest man in the world, right? Like everybody.
And then, so he's the richest man in the world. We're subsidizing him. Then he's donating to Donald Trump, get him to get influence in our government so he can get more subsidies. This is the Hyperloop.
He hates that. Not even the capitalists can defend it. They have to go say, oh, that's not real capitalism.
Yeah, I agree with you on this. I hate corporate welfare. I think it's the biggest perversion of capitalism out there.
But
in reality, of course, yes, it is absolutely in the interest of the capitalist class to use the state as a tool. In fact, that is quite literally what capitalism is. It's a system in which the capitalist class is the ruling class. But none of those finer points matter, right? You don't even really have to explain that because you're already on favorable terrain when these sorts of arguments are being made. Because it allows us to point out the contradictions between the idealistic version of capitalism that we've been sold and the actual reality of a capitalist system. The state is not a neutral actor that mediates between individuals. It is an institution that exists to perpetuate the domination of a class. Here's the thing, everyone intuitively understands this. So it's
right, and you can't have money without a state. Like, you can't have capitalism without a state, like a strong, big state, because who's going to print the money? The U.S. has the biggest army in the world, right? The strongest army in the world, so we have the strongest currency. Everyone has to use the U.S. dollar. We've been getting weaker as of late. Other countries have been getting stronger. So now we got BRICS coming up, and other countries coming up to try, and their currency's getting higher because we're getting weaker in status. Before, Britain was the strongest country in the world, and their currency was the world currency. So in capitalism, the strongest state has the strongest currency, and then whatever the strongest state is, the corporations are just going to work with that state the most and try to control that state. They're going to buy those politicians, whatever state it is. If it was Britain, you'd be buying British politicians. If it's China, you'd be trying to buy Chinese politicians.
Very important for us to bring this contradiction to the forefront of their minds. If there's just like one task that we have, it is to give people the language to articulate their lack of freedom. That's it. Just plant the seed. They can shout crony capitalism or corporatism all they want, because when they say stuff like that, they're on defense, which is exactly where we want them. So those are just some quick tips to help you communicate more effectively. There's so much more I could go into this video. I only covered like the first couple minutes of it. So if you want a part two...
All right, so we got quick tips. If you want a part two from this man, Harper O'Conner, go to his site, his videos, click like, leave some comments, whatever. Leave some comments on this video. Tell me what you thought. So I'm going to do news videos, and I'm going to do videos like this. Like, one, we need to communicate better, especially if you're on the left. Communicate, talk to people, and practice. Talk to people on the left, talk to people on the far right. Try to find the furthest people on the right. The furthest right, you'll be able to have the most kind of like illuminating conversations. If you have conversations with people in the center, people who only watch CNN, it'll kind of be frustrating. But you'll have to talk to these people also at times, right? So you want to talk to everybody and get used to talking to everybody. But I would suggest talking to far left, center left, anybody on the left first if you are a leftist person. But try to find the furthest right people, and you'll find more common ground with them because they're more anti-establishment. And I really think that libertarians are just confused lefties, and the more that we talk to them, the more that we can help them understand that they believe our policies, and that basically if you believe that people deserve... Like, we have enough. There's enough in the world. If you believe people deserve a house, health care, food, and just the bare minimums, you're on the left. After that, you can add stuff to it, or you can make people work for it. It doesn't really matter. But if you believe that people deserve the basics, and that the earth has enough to provide the basics for everybody, and we have enough technology to organize the basics for everybody, then that's just left-wing stuff. So we need to organize. First, I guess politically, we need to organize it. We need to organize our society just for everybody. Everybody's here. Let's make it for everybody. All right, so learn to communicate.